Good evening and welcome to the Finance Subcommittee meeting of the Brockton School Department. Today is Tuesday, May 13, 2025, 6 p.m. We are located at the Dr. William H. Arnone Little Theater at the Arnone School. I will start this meeting by calling this meeting to order by establishing a quorum. This will be a roll call as we do have a member that is with us remotely. Mrs. Sullivan.
Here.
Ms. Oliver.
Here.
Mr. Goins.
Here.
Mr. Vega. Mr. Sullivan.
Here.
Superintendent, myself, Tony as the vice chair, and then we also have Mrs. Azak, who is not present with us, who is under the weather. Tonight is the presentation of our FY26 budget. One of the most important roles of the school committee is crafting and making sure monitoring our budget. And I will hand over the floor and the reins to the superintendent, where she will present the FY26 budget for us, and I will move.
All right, good evening, Vice Chair, school committee members, and everyone watching at home. While tonight marks the first of several public meetings in the fiscal year 2026 budget of the Brockton Public Schools, as you know, the process began months ago, and this really is just part one, as we'll be having several meetings over the coming weeks. I am proud to say that BPS is on a path of meaningful improvement in how we build and manage our annual budget. For FY26, we continue to make progress by developing a budget that is more transparent, precise, and reflective of our operational needs. We are using what we have learned from the deficit of FY23 to make smarter, more data-informed decisions. In alignment with the most substantial recommendations from the independent reviews by Nystrom, Beckman, and Paris, and RSM, we have crafted a budget that is based on prior actual expenses to the extent possible, given the information we have, and that provides an ambitious and achievable roadmap for the future. So our net school spending budget is the Chapter 70 program, which provides state aid to school districts and establishes minimum spending requirements for each school district. So this comprises two sources of funding, the state aid portion called Chapter 70 and the local minimum contribution. This gives us our net school spending budget. From this amount, we pay for chargebacks to the city that are outlined in our Schedule 19, which we will touch on shortly. That then gives us our FY26 budget for the next fiscal year, or for FY26. This slide gives you an idea of how our budget is changing from FY25. This includes Chapter 70 on the top row and the local contribution, which are all calculated by the state. As you can see, there has been an increase by 10% for our Chapter 70 aid and an increase of 7% for our local minimum contribution, which brings our overall budget to an increase of 9.6%. Our Schedule 19 costs are following a similar trend and have gone up by 6%, but even after Schedule 19 costs have been deducted, our overall budget has increased by 10.9%, which is significant and largely attributable to the full funding of the Student Opportunity Act. So that brings us to that amount on that bottom left, which is $251 million. Schedule 19, sometimes called chargebacks, are the upfront costs that we pay to the city. Here you see our Schedule 19 costs over the last 2 years, as well as what we are proposing for fiscal year 26. Chargebacks are portions of salaries for city employees who work on school-related items like payroll and procurement, as well as costs incurred by the city for the schools, such as health insurance and pension costs. Since staffing is the largest portion of our budget, it is expected that health insurance will be the largest cost in our Schedule 19 at $38 million. Overall health insurance costs have also gone up, which is why you see an increase here. However, in other areas, such as pension contributions, you see that our costs have gone down. This is the result not only of greater collaboration with the city, but with our effort to calculate these costs based on actual costs incurred. So we have worked with the city to identify what those costs are. so that our methodology for these amounts is more exact and specific. And that was largely due to, I know, conversations that have happened in the school committee over the years about how Schedule 19 is calculated, what is the backup methodology for the amounts that you see on there. So we have had a working group that has worked for several months to come up with our final Schedule 19. So as you saw from the previous slide, the overall Schedule 19 amounts to, so I'll go back here, to $93 million this year as compared to approximately $88 million last year. So as we did with our budget investment plan that you recently approved, we have aligned our budget with our strategic objectives, which you see listed here. Focusing on early literacy, adopting high developing multi-tiered systems of support have been at the forefront of our efforts. These efforts remain prioritized in both our strategic plan and in our Student Opportunity Act implementation. And many of our evidence-based practices specifically highlight the needs of our students with disabilities and our English learners. The district continues to make improvements in student outcomes by adjusting staffing and resources to ensure all of our students have access to an inclusive curriculum. Our commitment is evident in our strategic investments, for example, in using carryover funds to purchase high-quality instructional materials for ELA and to enhance science resources, but also in maintaining our adopted HQIM, or high-quality instructional materials for elementary literacy, and budgeting FY26 funds dedicated to maintaining all of our HQIM and the one-to-one student-to-device ratio through ongoing laptop purchases. Also budgeted are funds to continue our commitment to providing meaningful professional development for educators, support staff, and administrators. While we remain committed to stability around the strategic objectives outlined in our 5-year strategic plan, we are just as committed to progress when it comes to our budgeting and fiscal practices. We continue to implement the recommendations from the audit investigation. As such, we've continued to divvy up the lines that were once concentrated in our 199 account. And the new lines that have been created not only promote greater detail and transparency, but they are also aligned to how DESE wants us to file our end-of-year report. This work started with last year's budget, but we've made even greater strides this year. For example, last year all BEA staffing was concentrated in one line that amounted to $123 million, whereas now it has been divided into 1,400 lines that denote the actual positions within the BEA. Finally, this budget is based on actual expenses from the previous year. Again, as we build up a more accurate and detailed historical budget over the years, we will be better able to predict and articulate our spending needs for following years. So while there are many notable areas of investment in this budget, I'd like to draw your attention to 3 overall. First, the district is requesting the majority of the addition of budgeted positions to support our growing population of students with disabilities. This request is grounded in both our legal requirements and our strategic commitment to equity and instructional excellence. Over the past year, we have experienced a significant increase in the number of students requiring special education services. In response and in alignment with federal and state mandates, the district must maintain compliance with our maintenance of effort standards, which ensure consistent financial support for the education of students with disabilities. These positions are necessary to prevent the district from incurring increased costs related to compensatory services, which the district is still providing as a result of our not hiring at a pace that has been proportionate with our growing population. Second, this budget also prioritizes expanding support for students in specialized programs by increasing funding for high-quality instructional supplies and materials, targeted professional development for staff, and enhanced classroom resources. Investments include specialized furniture, sensory tools, and accessibility equipment to create inclusive, supportive learning environments. These allocations reflect the district's commitment to equipping educators and ensuring all students receive equitable, individualized instruction. And third, we are making an investment in career technical and vocational education equipment upgrades. This budget supports the replacement and modernization of outdated equipment across CTE pathways, much of which has not been updated or replaced in decades. To maintain state CTE program designation and ensure alignment with industry standards, these investments are essential. Updated tools and technology will provide students with hands-on experience using current resources, enhancing program quality and preparing them to compete effectively with peers in CTE programs statewide. BPS continues to work toward expanding the programs as well through grants and partnerships, which will require local investments in facilities, equipment, and staffing. So as I've mentioned, our investments are largely driven by our student population and their changing needs. This slide shows the demographic breakdown and enrollment history for the district. Specifically, the first chart shows how the special education population has been increasing at a time when overall enrollment remained consistent. This means a greater proportion of students are receiving special education services, which necessitates special education being a budget driver for next fiscal year. The second chart shows this current year's percentage of students who DESE identifies as high needs. In addition to special education students, the district's English learners and low-income students combine to paint a picture of high needs throughout the district. The over 84% total means that in an average class of 25 students, 21 have one or more life circumstances putting extra stress on their day-to-day learning. To truly see a comparison over time, here is our enrollment over the last 2 decades. The 3 bars represent 2005, 2015, and 2025 on the left-hand side. As you see here, while our enrollment has fluctuated, our population of students who require additional services, whether they be IEP services on the left-hand side, IEP services on the left-hand side, or language services on the right-hand side, has only increased. So the proportion of students, again, that we are serving have greater needs, and those needs are continually rising. Finally, these charts show not just our historical enrollment, but our projections for the future. The first chart here shows district enrollment over the past many years. The takeaway is that Brockton's enrollment has remained consistently above 15,000. An analysis of the Brockton overall population as well as birth rates show that our enrollment will stay steady over the next 3 years. This is helpful information for us to consider as we plan for future school years. That being said, I think it's also important to note how our enrollment compares to the state as a whole. So the chart on the right shows that our enrollment has stayed consistent while the enrollment overall in Massachusetts has declined. I think that's a testament to Brockton as a city and the school system where families and students want to be. But I think it's also important to know that not all communities are facing the same challenges and circumstances that we face. And of course, the most valuable resource at our disposal that allows us to meet the needs of our students is our staffing. This chart shows what drives the largest costs as a percent of the total 2026 requested budget. Clearly, our largest cost driver is BPS staff at above 77%, which will be broken down further in the next slide. Allocating resources for instruction, such as textbooks, classroom supplies, and educational materials make up the next largest piece of the pie. And after that is building operations and technology and data, as those are the departments that facilitate our students' access to instruction. Here we see the largest budget driver, BPS staff, broken down by more specific categories. So of that 77%, this is where they fall. As you might expect, the largest group is classroom teachers at almost 42%. Paraprofessionals make up the next highest group at 16%, while other staff such as cafeteria workers, substitute teachers, bus drivers, custodians, admin assistants, and nurses make up the major categories after that. The non-union group includes myself, all non-union employees, the leadership team, principals, confidential administrative assistants, and many others who play a more behind-the-scenes role in the day-to-day functioning of our schools. At this time, I would like to hand it over to our interim Chief Financial Officer, Patricia Boyer, who will dive into the line item budgets you received.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I heard a few good comments about our budget book this year, and this is just the first rough draft, so much more excitement to come. So this page is not in your budget book. I'm not sure how clearly you can see that, but this was a presentation, a presentation from Open Architects. They had prepared this document. This is the first step when you're preparing a budget, is to calculate as best as possible your minimum net school spending requirements. The state budget is not finalized yet, so there may be some fluctuation in these final numbers, but this is the best information that we have as of today. And this, DESE starts these calculations based on the enrollment of our students. If you look at line 1, we're going to look at mostly the yellow colored column, which is FY26. It's not labeled at the top, it's just missing. So we had 17,000, just over 17,000 students enrolled as of October 1st, 2024. DESE then calculates certain populations' expected expenditures based on the needs of students. And based on that, DESE calculated our foundation budget at $344 million. Out of that amount, they also determine how much of that $344 million is required to be contributed by the city or town itself. In our case, the city of Brockton must contribute $62 million, and the remaining portion of that net school spending is made up of Chapter 70 state aid at $282 million. So our required net school spending is $344 million. Many districts that are in wealthier communities or that have better funding than the city of Brockton does contribute much more than their minimum net school spending during the course of a school year. However, Brockton is normally right at meeting our net school spending. If you look at, skip the per pupil line, but the next group is listed as required net school spending. These are charges that get charged back to our net school spending. The first 3 is the net charter tuition assessment, school choice tuition assessment, and a state special ed assessment. These amounts are directly deducted from our Chapter 70 funding. The next few items are the chargebacks that we expect the city of Brockton to pay on our behalf. You've probably seen these before. They're pretty historically similar. Municipal related costs at $5 million, maintenance at $350,000, pension contributions at almost $11 million, health insurance is $38 million, and retiree health insurance is $7 million. If we deduct all of those chargebacks from the $344 million in net school spending, that leaves our net school spending calculation at $251,570,700. So when we built the budget, we made sure that we accounted for that exact amount in our budget, and that is our budget request that we're presenting to you tonight. The next few line items show the non-net school spending budgets. We are hoping to keep that at $17 million. So our total budget appropriation is the $251 million plus the $17 million non-net. Our total budget appropriation is $268 million, $570,700. Part of which is net school spending, part of which is non-net school spending. Any questions on that before we go on? Oh, yes.
just really a clarifying question. If I'm seeing this correctly, what you're telling us is that none of these numbers are really made by you or the superintendent, but rather the result of calculations that start with DESI and trickle down from there.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Trish, can you hear me?
Yes.
You had talked about 17,000 students.
Yes.
Is that all of the charter schools as well, or?
It's not charter schools, but it's out-of-district students as well. Our in-school populations and our out-of-district students. No charter schools.
Okay, and it's 17,000 now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is a, excuse me, this is a sample of one of the school budgets that's in the budget book that you received over the weekend. This is actually page 3. This is what we expect to spend on the Arnone School in FY26. You'll see, and this pattern is similar across all of the schools. It starts with the principals and assistant principal lines, and then we have their administrative staff, clerical paraprofessionals if they're in that building. The elementary teachers and the elementary paras are considered in the regular classrooms. The instructional supplies, under the description, you'll see 763 students. I also took the enrollment as of October 1st per school, and in this case, it was 763 students, and for the instructional supplies, we used $40 per student. That's how we calculated the FY26 request of $30,520. That way we made it, in the past, they used to budget the same amount for every school regardless of the number of students. So this way it made it fair, more fair across the schools that have more students, et cetera. And then you'll notice the next few lines are listed as special ed teachers and paras. One thing that was lacking in the previous year's budget books, of which I brought our famous budget book from previous years, is you could not determine in this booklet how much special ed costs were. And that is a very critical number that we must figure every year, because the special ed department must meet MOE, which means maintenance of effort. And that basically means that based on your students, you have to spend at least that much or more on the same number of students every single year after that. If you don't, you have to have a very good reason why you didn't, such as special ed students not enrollment declining, or you may be penalized. So it's very important for us to capture special ed versus regular day teachers. So in this case, the Arnone School budget is $6.2 million. All of the descriptions that say FTEs are staff. So you could see most of the cost of this school and many of the others that you'll see in their budget book are staff costs. There's one instructional line item. That's what they get to purchase the instructional supplies with. So this is just a sample of one school. And these schools in your budget book start at page 1 and go to page 33. First, we have listed the Barrett Early Childhood, and then we have the 11 elementary schools listed, then the 6 middle schools listed, then the 3 high schools, which is Brockton High, Promise, and Champion. Then we have a few pathway programs, and the Adult Learning Center, which is considered a pathway program. So the schools end on page 33 in your budget book. On page 34 is where you'll start to see all of the offices that are comprised in our school department. The first one being the school committee expenses. Secondly is the superintendent's office. So this is also page 35 in your budget book. And you can see that, again, we have the FTEs, legal expenses, contract services. I don't have to read all the lines to you. You can certainly see. And then it flows to the next page, which is page 36 in your budget book. So the superintendent's office costs $2.4 million, which includes, if you look at the last two lines, the workers' compensation and the unemployment insurance, which equals about $1.5 million. Here's the school committee page. This is page 34 in your booklet. And the budget for the school committee office is $276,000. The last line shows you that professional liability insurance is $114,000 of that $276,000. And I'll just mention here, because I hadn't yet, so the account description, first column, is limited to 30 characters. Munis only allows 30 characters, so if you'll see a lot of abbreviations or words that look like they're cut off because we're only allowed to put 30 characters in that field. The description is what it is. The FY26 requested is the yellow column. And then the rest of the columns to the right are the 25 revised budget, the 24, 23, and 22 actuals. And you'll notice that we've made an awful lot of changes for the better in terms of the budget book. So where you'll see blanks or $0 amounts, it really means that things weren't budgeted in the budget or spent in the budget in the previous years. So why on the school committee elected salary line where there's 7 FTEs, there were no actuals reported on that line in previous years. So in addition to making sure the budget is properly accounted for on the correct lines, we also have to make sure that the expenditures get charged to the correct lines. Okay, here is an example of the non-net school spending budget for the Adult Learning Center. The Adult Learning Center receives a lot of grants that pay for a lot of these salaries at up to 80%. So we expect that out of our local budget for non-net school spending, it will cost us $240,000 to run the Adult Learning Center. Oh, that's my last page. So that's just to give you an idea of how to read the budget book. I'm open to any questions you have. If you wanted to look at specific schools or specific line items, we can certainly do that. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Oliver.
Just for clarification, the number of students, is this the current students in each schools, or is this from October of last year?
It's from October 1st
Okay.
of 24, which is this past October.
Do we have any idea how we are going to work with the current numbers that we have now in each schools?
If we had to adjust for any major changes in enrollment, we could certainly do that by moving some budget funds around. Most don't seem to increase or decrease by that much. And principals have been making do with the instructional supplies lines that we've been giving them in the past. So it's been adjusted for within the schools themselves so far.
And the supply items that is basically used for like books, papers, any material for the students to basically do their daily educational.
So not books, books are in a different line in the teaching and learning curriculum areas, which are in one of the offices departments. I don't have that specific page. So the books and the curriculum are accounted for elsewhere.
Okay, I think I saw it in the book.
Yeah, teaching and learning would have been the name of the department.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Vega?
Just so I fully understand this, anytime we see adopt on an FY 25, 24, 23, it means that that was not considered a line. Was that part of the 119 that was broken down?
In some cases, yes. Not in this particular case, but
If
yes.
it's not, if it wasn't from the 119, where was it captured?
That's a good question. Yeah, we'd have to do some research to find all of those line items. Some lines, not in this particular case, but some lines had been broken down into 2 or 3 different lines last year. This year, the administrator said, put it in one line. So a lot of collapsing of things and a lot of expanding of lines as we try to align all of our budget with the DESI chart of accounts and the DESI end-of-year reporting.
Well, I just have to say out loud, it's reassuring. I've been using that word a lot. It's reassuring to know that in this year as we go forward, the superintendent, her team, and we've been fortunate enough to hold on to you in an interim capacity. Thank you for so much for this work. You know, when we will never say goodbye, but when we have to say goodbye, you are leaving a legacy behind that other folk, that future generations of districts are just going to benefit from. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to make sure that I can get everything aligned to the best of my ability that I can so that it can follow going forward.
Mr. Gomes?
All right. It feels like I can't hear.
Just talk.
Well, first of all, thank you, both of you guys and the team. I know last year when we were voting for the budget, I did express my frustration for not being able to do this, to have this and actually go through it, look at, you know, I had the time to review, go through, see, you know, how many staff do we have, what are we allocating money for, and I believe it was a finance meeting that we had last year that I said I would love to participate in this before we send it over to the city. So thank you guys for this. I know a tremendous amount of work was put into this for us to have this massive budget book. I have a few housekeeping questions. Have we seen a dramatic or drastic change as far as enrollment after the last count that we took?
After the last what?
The last updated count that we have of our students. Has the numbers increased significantly or no?
Not significantly. It stayed pretty steady. We've had some enrollments and we've also had some withdrawals. I can pull that number for you. So for example, like we get a monthly report that tells us how many new English learners have come. And I will say that even though we had maybe 45 one month, there were also some withdrawals. So it's stayed steady, but generally the number does increase, but I can get you that number.
Okay. Also another question I had, Trish, when you were talking about the adult learning centers, I know we are responsible for the 20%, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So the amount that was showing, was that the 20% or the overall cost?
It is the 20%.
Just the 20% that we're going
Yes.
to contribute. Okay.
Yes.
The other thing that was also on the overall budget, not the book, where we had a maintenance fee. Do you know what does that entail?
So I don't have the exact breakdown in front of me. However, in the past, it seemed to have been related to city maintenance of our properties. For instance, plowing, snow plowing, sanding, perhaps manual labor to do that as well. Some of the school grounds. That's about as far as I'm familiar with.
Okay. And that's the typical amount that we usually cover?
That they estimate, yes.
Okay. But,
A- And so though that's one of the costs that the city reports on the Schedule 19. And you know, in the last year and this year as well, we've been trying to work with the city to identify specifically what these costs are.
okay. But as far as now, we don't have a detailed breakdown of services and costs.
Not at this point. I
Okay.
haven't seen that. These are just estimates that we were given.
And then I know last year also we had a huge discussion on Schedule 19 and all these meetings. And one of the things that we did request was that for the Schedule 19, we would like to see it broken down just like this, you know, full-time staff, salaries, everything. Do we have that for the Schedule 19 amount that is in this?
Not in my hands. I believe the city is working on that, but it has not come to me.
Okay, I would love to get a copy of that whenever possible. I'll hold for now.
Any further questions before I go to you, Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Sullivan, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you. Superintendent, then follow Mr. Sullivan.
So to answer the previous question, our October 1st enrollment was 15,649. And then as of May 1, it was 15,552. So it's gone down a little bit.
Mr. Sullivan?
Tricia, on the PEA line item, it was one line item last year,
Yes.
and this year it's 1,400.
It's 1,400 BEA teachers, but then we consolidated them. For instance, on that Arnone school page that I had shown you, there were, let's see, 35 regular ed teachers, 3 pre-K teachers, 12 special ed teachers. So even though there might have been 1,400 teachers, they've been consolidated by their school or their department.
The reason I'm asking, I was just wondering that Munis is a computer,
Yeah.
is saying, where all these people come from all of a sudden? You know, last year we only had one teacher for 15,000 students.
Right, so let me explain that. So last year, and in the previous 25 years, the previous budget books that you received were done in Excel, an Excel spreadsheet. That has nothing to do with Munis. It was done in a whole different accounting system. This year, we actually did put the budget into Munis. So that's why we were able to manipulate it and give us some of the data sorted it in different ways than you had been able to before. So there are 2 different accounting systems.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you. This is a great job. This is the best I've ever seen.
Oh, that's nice, thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Any further questions, follow-ups? Mr. Vega?
I'd like to blame Mr. Gomes for distracting me. So I have a couple of versions of the same question. It's how does Blink compare to other districts, right? So how do our non-net increases compare to other districts?
That I don't.
I know it's early in the budget season, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that without looking at other districts'
Okay.
budgets.
Right.
And you have to remember that our non-net school categories are basically 4 different categories. The Adult Learning Center, which most school districts do not have. Community schools, again, most districts do not have. And then transportation and crossing guards would be in the other districts. So without looking at someone's specific budget, I couldn't answer that.
No, that makes sense. And so I think what you're highlighting is that there are some cost variables that other cities and towns don't bear.
Correct.
And again, if we don't have, like, I'm really posing these as, if at a future presentation, how do the cost drivers that you mentioned, Dr. Tiani, like how do they compare to other school districts?
So that is actually something, now that we've gotten down to this level of detail, we're actually able to look at that and see. So I can't make one of the things, for example, that we're looking at is our salaries. Now, it is very common that the majority of a school district's budget is in their salaries. As far as the percentage, though, we were actually pulling and trying to look at districts that are similar size to see how we compare with them. And then, so the first question is how do we compare? And then the second question is why? Is it because, we do have an adult learning center? Is it because we do have these additional positions? Is it because we staff our classrooms differently? And then also, it's the salaries. What do our collective bargaining agreements look like? So there are several different areas that could impact that, but I think what you're highlighting is where we've now gotten to, which is the point where we can actually say, okay, how do we compare to other districts, and are we doing this in the best way possible?
Thank you. And the last piece, again, and I'm recognizing as I'm asking these questions that we've only now reached a point where we can compare. But I'm assuming that, part of that comparison might be able to look at year over year in other towns, as that's for public documentation. And with that in mind, then my last question in the how do we compare category is, how do we compare in terms of chargebacks as a percentage of the budget? I know that, our budget blows other towns out of the water, but as a percentage of the budget, I would like to know in the future, like, how much are other towns and cities paying back, or school districts paying back? And sort of riding on that, I just want to get a point of clarification. As our interim CFO was talking, Mr. Gomes asked a question about Schedule 19, and as still a relatively new person, am I to understand that we've just provided a very detailed accounting of what happened last year, or happened this year, and what we project for next year. We have not to date received anything similar on Schedule 19 from the city side? A detailed accounting of what the district is paying for.
Right.
Oh, go ahead. We haven't received the MOU. Is that what we're?
No, I just mean in the same way that we're able to point at next year we'll be paying this much for this and this much for that. Do we have anything that lets us know what we'll be paying for within the Schedule 19 lines?
So over the past probably 10 or 15 years, or maybe longer, the Schedule 19 had been prepared by people in our finance office. The Schedule 19 was not prepared at the City Hall as it normally is. So in the last, I think this is the second or third year, where we've given the Schedule 19 back to the city and said, you're supposed to fill this out. You're supposed to complete this. You are supposed to know what you're spending on behalf of the school departments. They have given us the Schedule 19 with numbers, amounts plugged in, but now we're asking for the backup for all of those numbers. So we do have a Schedule 19 with particular lines, like the legal office, the treasurer's office, of what they think their costs are, but it's just a dollar amount, and we've asked for the details behind it. Show us the salaries that you pay for that office, and if you're going to charge 10% of those salaries, show us how you came up with the dollar. with the dollar amount. We just don't want to see a dollar amount. We want to know what's behind that dollar amount.
Right.
So that's really what we're waiting for, is how they calculated their numbers.
Right. And to be clear, I'm not looking to point blame or get anybody
Right.
in a gotcha moment. I
Right.
just want to be clear that, I've mentioned, and several other, my colleagues, both on the school committee and the city council and the mayor's office, have talked about needing a spirit of collaboration. And collaboration is more than just goodwill and how you're doing, it's work. And so I really want to exhort our colleagues of other bodies to please do the work and get us that information so we can continue to make the kinds of informed decisions that need to be made for the health of our district and the city
Right.
as a whole. Thank you.
And if I may add to that too, there are some lines where we have gotten to a level of specificity. For example, the pension line. We were able to actually create a calculation that's backed up by actual numbers and costs. But as we're drilling into each line, we haven't gotten there yet. And that is still the work in progress, where, for example, the legal costs, we're trying to figure out what proportion of the work or salaries on that side. So even figuring out a methodology for how to do that is a conversation we're continuing to have. Of course, we're having these working groups and conversations as we're also trying to put together the budget. So at some point it was like, okay, let's agree on, the specific numbers and the calculations in certain lines that we have come to that level of specificity on, and then others we were like, okay, we can agree that this sounds about right. And so it's better than before. It's more specific than before. But our hope is to continue to get to that level of specificity, so that we really know where every dollar is going. Right. And I will say that they have been, we have been working in collaboration to get there.
I appreciate that. Thank you both.
Before I go to Ms. Oliver, on this Schedule 19, for example, when we talk about the maintenance, like they're doing the parks, their plumbers are coming in or their electricians are coming in. So correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, there's supposed to be a journal entry of, we've done this work at this date, at this school, this is what we provided. On our facilities subcommittee, we're going to have at the end of the month, you're going to see the actual city charter ordinance where the parks department the school district, we control certain parks and fields that are adjacent to schools. This is going to be the third time that I'm bringing it back to the school committee, that the parks department continues to maintenance our fields and our parks when we already have a grounds crew. So what are you guys really doing if we already have our team? So those are one of the things that need to be cleaned up. You guys will get that material prior to that meeting, so you guys can see, like, why are we paying this maintenance if we already have the grounds crew that does this work? The line item, and you can see it, it's right on the end of the year report, right on DESI's website, is when we talk about legal services. We have our own legal department that represents us, so what are they actually doing? Because I've never, they do some work, they do, but I've never taken a vote by this body to ask the city solicitor's office to do any work on our behalf. So even though there's city contracts that they look at, so it's very interesting when you go line item, like, why are we paying this? Why are we paying that? Why are we paying that? My opinion, I don't think the facts are there, is that we're supplementing their budget. We're paying for their services because they don't have the revenue to sustain their services. It's clear as day. So it's just a work in progress of what do we really owe, what don't we owe, to make sure that our dollars are staying in the school district. So, Mrs. Oliver.
Just to piggyback on both of my colleagues, I have a question for the superintendent. How does other cities that you have worked with handles basically Schedule 19?
So there are a couple different methodologies that DESI is okay with, because they ultimately have to approve it. And so one of the ways, for example, can be, we are this percentage of the city's budget. So it could be that way. So you figure out, okay, if we're this percentage of the city's budget, then you calculate it that way, and you kind of extrapolate then what should our chargebacks be. So there are a couple different ways they do it in my last district, because again, the chargebacks were very different. So for example, all of our nurses were actually city employees. So they were not school, or they were school employees, but they were charged back to the city, they were hired to the city. So every city does it a little different. So what we did is every year, kind of like we're doing here, we got a little bit more granular. So for example, the first year I got there, we had just paid for what is the budgeted amount of nurses. So if we had budgeted 25 positions, we paid them for 25 positions. Then over time we realized, but we only filled 20 of them. So now we're gonna base it. So it was a very similar process and conversation as what we are doing here, which is trying to kind of have that negotiation back and forth of, okay, what is the actual expense?
Thank you. And also, just to piggyback on what Mr. Vega said, we're not trying to do a gotcha moment to anybody, right? We want to just basically always be transparent, accountability to be done. The fact that you did this booklet, this is very transparent, where each line item was exactly stating what we're going to be spending on and the dollar amount. So when it comes to Schedule 19, right, it's just very interesting that they're not willing to be transparent of what we're paying for each line item, or it has never been provided to us. Since we started here, we've been asking till we're blue in the face, but still I'm waiting for it and I have not received it. It's the fact that we pay more for legal fee on Schedule 19 than our own legal team. That's very concerning to me, that we've asked for that line item to basically state, what are we paying for? What service are you doing on behalf of the school district that we're paying this amount of money when our own legal team doesn't even get paid that much? And then if it was not enough snow last year, and you're now requesting $100,000, what are you going to be doing with that money? We're just asking the same respect you ask from us to basically do the same thing. We've got to be transparent, and whoever's doing got to take accountability for the nonsense they're doing.
So I can at least speak to that. We haven't gotten to every single department, that is for sure. So what you're speaking about in general is something we're trying to work towards. But for the legal department, I can say that this is a conversation that we've been having. And I think also it changes year to year as well. So we are self-insured, so there have been some areas that the city solicitor has been supporting us on. Also, there has been a lot more, as you all know, because of the contracting. We've required a lot more additional support as we've gotten that process up and running this year than maybe we might need in future years. But I will say that they are engaging in the conversation. Some of it is kind of hard to quantify, and some of it is hard to quantify as far as what is it going to be next year? Is this just this year? But I will say that when we actually looked at and the city solicitor was able to give us, here are all the things we're working on for the school department, I will admit that even I was like, oh, okay, that is more than I expected. So I think it is just about having that conversation and then being able to provide those examples to all of you. And so I think that's where we'll definitely get. We haven't done that with every single department, to your point, so there's others that I have a little less clarity, but I will say for that one in particular, that conversation has been happening, and we are trying to have a better understanding of what their role is, what our role is.
And I appreciate the conversation that you're having on all sides of the aisle, but I just wish that they would also, it's going over a year now we've been asking for this, because if they were more transparent, there wouldn't be so many suspicious, right? Just give us what we're asking for. You have to be able to give us invoices, and that's what we've been asking for. It's basically been on deaf ear, and nobody's listening to what we want at this point. But I do appreciate that there's a conversation happening, but I do hope that before the end of the year, we do have some type of invoices of 2025 or 24 to figure out exactly what was spent on. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Mr. Gomes, Mrs. Sullivan, do you have a question? I don't want to forget about you either.
Not at this time. Thank
All
you.
right. Mr. Gomes?
Yes. So I'm looking at the net school spending sheet that we had. Few things are different. So for the transportation department, I have here the 18 million. and on the one that we have over there went down
To 17.
to 17,
So,
yes.
yes, so 17 million is the amount that we have agreed with the city is our non-net school contribution from them. You are correct that when you count the four things that are non-net, we have been able to reclass some expenses that should have been on our net school side of the budget always, such as middle school sports, for example. So we've been trying to make sure that we're cleaning up and putting on non-net only those expenses that really need to be covered by the city. So we've been in the process of doing that. And as you know, transportation is still a work in progress. We're not 100% sure. We're working on actuals this year, but our goal, as we all know, is to save money next year. So we did work with the city on what should that amount be. Our budget for transportation, as we know, is coming in at more like 19.5 this year. What we've heard from the audit is it should be more like 16 million, and then with the 1 million for Adult Learning Center and the other services, we definitely agreed with the city and the schools to 17 million. That being said, they are aware, just, you know, as everyone is, that the transportation is a work in progress, that the projected amounts could be closer to 18. So that is an amount that we're going to have to keep our eye on, and we might be in a similar situation as we were this year, where we're having to go back to the city council and ask for an appropriation. Hopefully not. That's what we're working on right now too, is not having to do that. But that was what we are projecting out, hopefully with the cost savings.
Okay, and I do appreciate how we're tightening and cleaning up the transportation department. I was curious because I know previous year it was higher than that. We didn't get the amount, and you know, it's still, well, we guys, not enough. We were working things out to make it work, basically. And I know it's essential for us to do the best that we can for both sides, you know, city and school, to be well balanced. But there is a possibility that 17 might not be enough, correct?
Yes, and they are aware of that. We originally were at 18, then we went down to 17. That has been a conversation back and forth, similar to Schedule 19. So we do appreciate the appropriation, which is higher than last year, where I think we got the 11 and then the 6, you know, and so this, I think, is a step in the right direction, is getting the appropriation up front. I do hope that that is the amount that we need, but yes, the city is aware, and that has been a conversation where, again, we know that we will have to revisit it next year.
I don't know if you have the details, but do you know how we got to the first original number, the 18?
So we are trying to use the actuals as best as possible from this year. But again, we know the actuals this year are high, and our hope is to, with the bid that we're putting out, that we're going to be able to save money. But that was based on what we're projecting out from this year.
Okay, I'll yield it for now.
Any further questions? Mr. Sullivan?
Trish, you had mentioned that the state hasn't finalized their budget yet.
Correct.
Do you have an idea when that's going to be done? The reason I'm asking is, could these figures all change?
Usually, it goes through different cycles within their budgeting cycle, various iterations. They've got one more group that has to look at the budget, and usually the amounts don't change very much from one group approving to the next. May go up $1 million, may go down $1 million, but usually it's pretty level.
Stays the same.
Pretty much stays the same, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any members, follow-up question? Mr. Vega?
Mr. Gomes reminded me of something in discussing transportation, and you know, trying to find that number. And I think we all appreciate the fact that you're taking steps to kind of rein in transportation costs as much as possible in the face of growing need. And I know that our colleagues on the city council really, you know, were quite clear in their desire to see you do that as well. Can you just remind us what are the steps you've taken thus far to start to rein in those costs?
So this school year, what we've been trying to do is course correct mid-year. So some of that has been consolidating routes, looking at route costs, trying to figure out if there's a better way to reroute so that we are, we require less private buses. Another thing we've done is for those contracts, we looked at some of our contracts or our invoices where it was like the highest, and we looked at why, and if it seemed like that made sense, how many students are they transporting? Does it make sense that it costs this amount every month? And where it felt like maybe, we could do better, we did rebid it out. So we had some, again, though, as we're doing this in the middle of the year, those cost savings are only for the next 4 months or for the last 4 months of the school year. So, it did render some conservative cost savings for the year we're in, but I think what it has demonstrated to us too is the more efficient way to do it moving forward. Now, obviously, we're going out to bid, so that's the most efficient way, but in the case that we do have to do some kind of hybrid model, I think we'll be better suited to do it next year in a way that is more cost effective. There were certainly things that we were doing that were not helping us keep costs down.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any questions further? I'm reserved with the, in the superintendent, I've already expressed my opinion with the non-net dropping down from 18 to 17, knowing that it's going to be 19. For the simple fact it's not, we're going off actuals. We know it's a work in progress of trying to bring that number down. If we can get it to 16, 15, or 14, that's great. We're all taxpayers in the city here, but at the same token, it's just, whatever this body decides to do, asking for less than what we know is going to be spent is not, it doesn't sit well with me, because we know we're going to be back asking for an appropriation of that $2 million, and I'm going to, where's that money coming from? I'm in those financial talks, so it doesn't look, that it's going to be there. I hope it is. Hopefully the state kicks in some more funds and we can address that. But, my sentiment is that we should actually request for what is the actual that we're going to end this fiscal year with. And then if there's more money left over, just like we did one year, and we gave it back within transportation because it was kind of over budget. And, some of our, I'll say, colleagues on the other side, I can see it now, certain members over there, it is an election year, here's the school department again, overspending what we gave them. So those are one of the things that's, concerning to me is like, we asked you for this, but this is what you gave us. So we can go back, FY 23 and 24, actually 22, it was cut by $4 million because we requested on the 18 and they gave us 14, and then last year was cut again to basically, let's say, let's cut their budget to see what they're going to do. This is what it is, not just what this body has said and the leadership of the school department, but also the state says that. I could say that because I'm in those meetings. So isn't the superintendent. I think the school department has made many, many great strides. We can see it here. That's the reason why we have a new superintendent. And I just think the city has to do a better job on their finances and clean up their house, because we're doing all we can on the school side. Thank you to Trish and the team and Open Architects and superintendent team, Sharon Walder, and everybody else that's been working hard to make sure that we have a productive budget moving forward, so we can make sure that our students are getting the quality education that they deserve. Before I go to anybody, Mrs. Sullivan, I don't want to forget about you. Do you have any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Mr. Gomes.
I had this question earlier, but I forgot. That's why I had to pause. If you could enlighten us, what happens when the funds come in and we have the Schedule 19? Is it deducted up front? And then if not all the money is expended, we get the remainder balance? Or is it something that gets charged to us continuously? as services are rendered.
So, is that on? So, we don't get charged, and it doesn't come out of our budget. It just, the city pays the bill with their own budget, but in Schedule 19 is when they declare that it was really a school expense. So it comes out of our Chapter 70 money. The Chapter 70 money all goes into the city. And the portion that we are going to spend, the 251 million, that also remains in the city. So all of the Chapter 70 money goes into the city treasurer's bank and sits there. So they pay their bills with their account numbers. We pay our bills with our account numbers. All Schedule 19 is doing is declaring that the city expense was meant for a school expense. So they're not paying our bills, we're not paying our bills. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. And when that happens, do they provide, I mean, we talked about it earlier, the documentation, we want to see, you know, backup for the amount of money that's being spent. So when they make a payment on behalf of the schools, for instance, let's say cleaning the parks or something, do they provide the schools with backups or?
They have not to date.
Okay. What's that?
Trish, can you just, I know, can you just inform the committee and also for the public, what happens when you file your end of the year report and that gets sent over to the stateside level? Because we know we've had some cleaning up that we had to do from last fiscal year and the year before. So the members can kind of like get a sense of it, you know, with the Schedule 19, even though there's a number there, but when it gets to the folks at DESI, what their authority is.
Sure. So when a fiscal year ends on June 30th, we have until October 1st to get that end of year report completed and filed into DESI. It's uploaded into DESI by October 1st. The next step for us is that our auditors come in and audit that report. And that by March 31st, I believe, they have to tell DESI that it looks okay, there's a problem, you know, whatever. If there are problems, if the auditors find any problems, then we have to do an amendment to the end of year report, which means we're telling DESI we made a mistake on line 100, that amount should have been reported on line 101. So you fix the correction. Also, DESI looks at the Schedule 19 amounts to make sure that what cities or towns are claiming the cities and towns spent on our behalf look reasonable from year to year, look reasonable for a district of our size. And in this case, DESI looked back over the last 5 years of Schedule 19 amounts and didn't see consistencies. Things were up, things were down. So DESI has asked us to do the amendment. The city cannot do the amendment. The school's responsible for doing the amendment to get correct information from the city in order to file the amendments on past years. So that's where we stand now.
Thank you. Mr. Gomes?
So how are we doing with obtaining the information to do the amendment?
How are we maintaining the information?
Yeah, how are we doing as far as getting the information and being able to do the amendment?
So TJ and Open Architects is working with the city on coming up with the correct numbers.
Okay. And as far as you know and as far as the information that you guys have, how does knowing maybe some of the things that you guys know influence the Schedule 19 charge that we're looking at currently for FY26?
Well, that's why we really want to see the backup and be able to scrutinize things to see if it makes sense to us as well.
Okay.
What's up?
Go ahead.
Ms. Holloway?
Just to piggyback, how many years are we going back? Just to clarify again, I
They
think I heard
looked-
you, but
They looked back over the last 5. We just have to make a correction in 1 year.
so they looked at 5 years, but then they're not worried about the 4 years. They're just worried about last year.
I believe it was 23. They want us to make the change for FY23.
The year that we had the deficit.
Do you have a number that they questioned that we paid but shouldn't have paid that amount? What was the number?
I believe it was the pensionable costs was one of the categories. I think it's a few $1 million.
That we overpaid from the school side to the city?
That the city declared more in expenses than they actually spent. Yeah, but it didn't cost us. We didn't pay the bills. It's just they declared the wrong amount on our Schedule 19.
So they declared to the state, to DESE, a certain
Correct.
amount that was incorrect.
Yes, and TJ and Open Architects is working to finalize that, to figure out if that's the case.
And to just be clear and transparent, they went back 5 years and they've seen a pattern, but the worst one was in FY23.
Yes, I believe that was a year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Sullivan?
Tricia, just one quick question. The 251 million is the the Chapter 70 money,
Yes,
not counting the city's contribution?
correct.
What I'm trying to, just for the public to know that the grants are on top of that, is not included the grants?
Oh, correct. All of this is just the local budget. Grants are all separate. We pay many more salaries from the grants, many more expenses from grants and revolving funds. So this has nothing to do with grant expenditures or the revolving accounts.
Do you have a figure of what the grant money was last year?
I think it was near 80 million in grants that we received.
On top of the Chapter 70?
Yes.
Wow. Expensive. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Vega?
And I apologize, 'cause this isn't a question so much as a statement. I just, we've spent a lot of time this evening talking about Schedule 19. And I think, for folks who are tuning in or wondering about it, it represents about 2% of our overall budget, which doesn't seem like a lot. But I think what people need to understand is, as we saw early in the superintendent's presentation, there isn't a lot of wiggle room to begin with. So when the state does these calculations for you, the few variables that you can control, you've got to grab onto. So even though 2% doesn't seem like a lot, it's one of the few variables that we can control as a city. So I just don't want it to get twisted and folks thinking, oh, they're talking about 2%. They're not talking about the whole problem. No, this is part of the problem. And it's not anyone's fault. I think we've recognized that there's enough blame to go around. But the solution is going to be in these small variables.
Any other questions? Do we have I'm not sure if you even have this information with you now, maybe. Do we have an actual number of openings district-wide that, as far as teachers' positions,
So
clerical,
I have them. I did not count them up, but there's a significant amount. So, and they fall into a couple of different categories. They fall into positions that were just vacant all year. They fall because we couldn't get folks, but then they are positions that are technically considered vacancies now because we had to post them because somebody might be on a waiver or an emergency license. So we do have that figure, and what we'll do for next time is we can actually like give you a chart that sort of breaks down for you what that has looked like over the course of the year. And if I may just speak to sort of the process for the next few weeks, because this is a, you know, a multi-meeting process. I know I've already received some questions over email, so if you please, I know this is a lot to digest, so please feel free to send us any questions. Generally, the way I've done it is that I will respond to your question. If it seems like a question that's very, you know, that might be something the entire public wants to know, or something we may, a broader theme that we should have touched on, then in our next presentation, next Tuesday, we'll have a revised presentation that includes some of that information, some of the questions that came, so we can clarify some of those areas that that are of great interest. Also, you know, I would love to have conversations with each of the school committee members too, just about the overall process. So I'll be reaching out to you because, again, this is my first one. I want to make sure it is meeting your needs. And so this really, we want this to not only be several meetings long, but for this to be an ongoing dialogue with the school committee to let us know what more we can provide, what additional information would help you, would help inform your decisions or your conversations. Should the budget book look different in the future, like things like that. So we invite all questions, concerns, and feedback. We will also be revising the budget. There are some areas where we realized there were some errors, and so there will be some cleanup that we'll do before our next budget meeting as well. But again, if you catch anything, please, or if you have any questions, this doesn't look right, please let us know, because we do want to make sure that it's exactly as it should be.
Is that going to be indicated in the book with the openers, or is that something totally separate?
So,
because I know this is a whole new
yeah,
gamut for us, you know. So
that's a great question.
because, like, if
I mean, we certainly have that list and could send it as an attachment, but we will also kind of aggregate it for you too, so you can see how those positions fall. Because there were some that it's like they went vacant all year, there was no point in filling them. There are others that are going to be posted. They're already existing budgeted for positions that somebody either had an emergency license or a waiver, and then there's the vacancies that are coming up for retirees, and it's also going to be different too, right, for FY25 and FY26, like what we're expecting for FY26. So we'll show you what was vacancies this year, and then what's going to be vacancies, or what you'll see posted for next year, because that'll be different too. So we're posting positions that we are anticipating as vacancies because of licensure.
So for example, like when we looked at the Arnone, where it said, you know, the 35 FTEs, is that positions that are already filled, or is that including, like, that's what the building needs, but let's say out of the 35 we have 32, but there's 3 openings, so this is what the building actually needs to okay.
Yes.
That answers that as well. I think moving forward, this is just my request, it'll be worthwhile. I know that we approve the hirings and resignations and so forth, but that comes with our bi-weekly book. If we can get the actual job openings and like an attachment to that section of our agenda book, so we can actually see what job openings are there. I'm assuming that probably over 100. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's a good thing for us. It's a very good thing for us. But I was at a training with one of the HR folks, and you know, we were already getting some folks over from Bridgewater Raynham who was laying off. So I think, you know, we're in a great position, but we also want to be able to spend the funds that we have, making sure it's in the correct area. Any other questions? Mrs. Oliver?
Just a statement, I do, just to piggyback, Mr. Rodriguez, I do appreciate that you did add the numbers of each school, what it needs for educators basically to make it run. I think I've asked Attorney Sai about like a breakdown of each school of students on the IEP, and also 504 for each school, to make sure that we have enough adjustment counselors, the SPED support team, and also nurses in the building. That would be great that we can also have that in our budget book, so we can just look forward and see if we have budget for that, to make sure that each school, depending on the numbers that students that have an IEP and 504s, we have enough support system in there. Especially it's very, struggling, those schools very struggles with not having enough support system if their numbers are very high with students on IEP and 504. So that'd be great to have that number. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I was just wondering on the job fair a week ago or 2 weeks ago, how'd you make out on that? Did you get people to come in and get hired?
I can get back to you on that information. I actually don't know it off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Thank you.
But it was successful. We had a lot of folks come.
Good.
Any other members with any questions? Mrs. Sullivan, do you have a comment or a question?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? I know I've met with Mrs. Tsai, and I know all of the members are going to be meeting with the superintendent with their, I don't want to say ask, but with their, with their priorities and areas. I know I mentioned mine with our mentoring services that's run by Mario Lamar. I would like to see that increased as well. We know we need support for our students. The attendance department, and hopefully we can get them before us, before June. That's one of the areas where my opinion, I'll refer to the professionals, but I think that's an area that needs growth because our attendance numbers are, concerning to me as well. And then also our security specialists. I know we have them at the high school, but we have our alternative schools that I think that needs to be looked into as well. IT, those are one of the things that I've been taking a deeper dive, and I'll be talking to Mr. Vega so I can get educated a little bit more on some of the stuff. We're purchasing laptops, and I asked you that earlier, and we can get into a deeper, I think a leasing mechanism is worthwhile so we can have that turnover instead of purchasing that and moving forward. So there's a lot of areas from athletics to facilities. I know Ken's put in a lot of work, and the committee will hear that on the 27th. Yeah, 27th, right? Yeah, 27th. So, yeah, great. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Any further questions, comments by any of the members, feelings, anything else that we haven't touched upon? No? But, Mr. Sullivan can attest to this, and myself as the middle guy, and Mr. Sullivan, the dean, is, as you can see, from previous years, and I actually went and looked at a couple years of budget books, and then, seeing it was just a printout of Munis, and certain numbers just plugged in, which is when you see what we have before us, the breakdown, the level of breakdown, or where the funds are actually going. In accountability, we're looking at our dashboard that's created. It's linked to Munis in real time, so we can actually do our job of monitoring that in certain areas, so we can get red flags for spending in certain areas and moving forward. But I just want to echo that I am very, very pleased and happy with the way that this budget process is going this year. And hopefully the public is more engaged. For those that are sitting at home, I know a lot of people watch at home, and we have a few folks here, and there's some that attend our meetings on a continuous basis, is that hopefully when we approve this budget, we have a full room and people can make their comments and reach out to us and ask various questions, what we can answer or can't answer moving forward. I just wanted to just say something. I was just trying to put some stuff together, but I'll articulate this in a further meeting. I just wanted to read something that I was, working on, putting it to work. It's almost like, let's be clear. Underfunded schools lead to overcrowded classrooms, outdated textbooks, teacher burnout, and a lack of critical programs like arts, special education, and mental health support, which is not, acceptable where we are, but, it's, where we put in these funds is gonna be very important. Just to remind the members, it's what this body deems important of which areas to really focus on. So I know this is a lot of reading material. Go home, digest it. It's gonna be updated, and I can't wait to see the final product. So this is just a taste of what's to come for the city of Brockton, and I know some of the members on the council are gonna be very happy with how they see this budget book presented in the community, so. Any further last comments or questions? Anybody? Seeing none, thank you, Mrs. Boyer. Thank you, Superintendent, for your presentation. For those that are in attendance, those at home that are watching. Mr. Sullivan, before I finish, do you have any comment or question before we move forward?
Motion to adjourn.
Before we get to the motion to adjourn, do we have any other business? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and our next facilities. Finance Subcommittee will be on the 20th, which will be at the high school at 6 p.m. And Mrs. Sullivan is motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Oliver. We're gonna, because she's remotely, Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver? Mr. Gomes? Mr. Vega? Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Meeting is adjourned.